It's great to have you join me again for our Bible study here in the book of Revelations. And as we've been going through the different churches here in chapters 2 and 3, then we've arrived at the very end of chapter 3. So this is the church at Laodicea, and it's probably one of the more commonly referenced ones. We hear a lot about the what would you say, judgment, I guess, against them, the criticism of them. Verse number 14, Revelation 3, is what begins this. And then just quickly moving on into verse number 15, we see a similar message that we've heard before. I know thy works. And then he gets into this, so we're right away into the issue. Part of the issue of him knowing their works is that he also knew that they were neither cold nor hot. We think quickly, at least if you're familiar with this passage at all, you probably think right away of the lukewarm nature of it. So that's the judgment pretty much against them. And I will say, too, it seems as though they felt like they were pretty self-satisfied, and that was probably a reason for the judgment against them. Is, well, for example, in verse 17, it says, because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. So when they thought they had it all put together, they thought everything's going great, then he says, you don't really see yourself as you really are. And so then he goes on, verse number 18, he's counseling them, get true riches, the riches that come from God. I counsel thee to buy of me, of course this is Jesus talking, buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed. So he's kind of saying, you think you have riches and honor and all the rest. In reality, you don't, but you need them. And so, of course, that's the secondary part. Let's go back for just a little bit now to the lukewarm aspect, because in reality, that's where a lot of us may find ourselves living. Oh, we may not say that. We may not want to think that, but in reality, that's kind of where it is. Because let me just give you an example. If, for example, these are the cold days of the year for us. We're of course, just almost here at Christmas time, and in the part of the country that we live, it's pretty chilly. It's supposed to get real cold this weekend, and so I enjoy hot drinks. Well, if my wife is especially bad about this. If I get a drink, or she gets a drink, a hot drink of some sort, and we get distracted, it may sit on the counter or on the little stand there, and before very long, it has assumed room temperature. Later on, in the summertime, we will want a cold drink. Maybe add some ice. We have something, pretty cold that's going to really be refreshing, but we let it sit there for a little bit, and what does that do? Well, the hot drink cooled off, and the cold drink warms up again to room temperature. Is there anything really strange about that? No, it's the natural process. And so what I've kind of thought about here with Laodicea is actually, I know Jesus was condemning them. We can't make excuses for them, but it is very natural to happen. And so what we have to do is not just accept the status quo, not just kind of go with the flow, not just, if it's convenient, then I'll be spiritual, but we have to purpose to be fervent, to be on fire, to really be seeking after God with our whole heart. And so today I want us to remember, this is not that they just rebelled against God. It was just that they sort of cooled off, that they kind of lost their fervency. They, distractions or various other circumstances in their lives may have just sort of taken off the keen edge. Just being casual about it really is enough to keep us from staying hot, if I could use the terminology here, spiritually. Obviously, lukewarmness is not what God is pleased with. Just because we had an experience one time, just because we were hot, just because my cup of a hot drink was great at first, does not mean that it's going to be whenever it cools off. And it takes some consistent heating. Just kind of continue that analogy for just a moment. Various times we may have something left over that when I got a cup of it when it was hot, and then later on I'll put it back into the microwave. It's time to heat it back up again because I want it really to be good and hot. Well, sometimes obviously you can apply that, put a saucepan on the stove or whatever else, but the idea is it takes some sort of extra energy, extra fervency. It takes a fresh, intervention to make those things hot again. And the same with us as well, that we have to really put forth the effort. We could apply that in a variety of ways. Let me just mention your devotional life. If you want to stay right with God, you must spend time with God. I've preached this on, and I guess over time I've really realized it all the more, especially your prayer life. It's so easy for us to kind of get the idea that, I'll read the Bible maybe even, and I'll pray a little bit on the go or whatever, but we must have time with God alone. And if you don't, it's easy to have this very thing happen. Now, let's go down to what he says here in verse 20. Well, actually, verse number 19, first of all, it's not like, it sounds terrible. He says, I'm ready to spew you out of my mouth. But then in verse number 19, he says, as many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous, therefore, and repent. So what he's saying is, I still love you. I still want you to get back on track. I want you to be able to get this taken care of. And then he says in verse 20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me. God doesn't just cast us off. For us, sometimes, again, I know the analogies once in a while, they break down. And we may just pour it out and decide I'm going to get something fresh. But in this case, God would like to restore that to us. He wants to help us to really have that relationship with him that is pleasing. We don't have to just settle for a steady decline. It can easily happen, but we don't have to settle for that. But instead, we can just keep having God refresh us and kind of put the fire under us again. Maybe it's through revival or a special service at church or our own personal devotions, a song that we heard on the radio or whatever it may be. But somehow something just kind of stirs afresh inside of us, and we have that fire kind of stir us up again to a greater determination. Maybe it's a book you're reading as well. Whatever. We could mention a variety of things. But I want us just to recognize, even today, that it is not acceptable to cool off. It's not acceptable to just kind of go with the flow and just kind of be careless about whether we're going to walk with God or maybe relying on past experiences. But it doesn't have to be that way. And he reaches out to us. He's standing at the door knocking. And so I urge you even today, obviously here we are at the Christmas time. And what better time to kind of make a fresh journey back to Jesus and to worship him and to enjoy his presence and his help. And so I urge you to do that today. And when he's knocking, open the door. Let him come in and spend time with you, giving you a fresh determination to walk with him. Well, God bless you. Until we meet again, I encourage you to continue to study here in the book of Revelation. We're not going to maybe cover a lot of the in-depth prophecy things and everything, but there's stuff right even here in this next chapter that I think will be good for us. And so you kind of take a look at it maybe. Chapter 4 is pretty short, and maybe just kind of prepare yourself for the next Bible study. Have a wonderful afternoon, wonderful day, whatever time it is for you today, and may God bless you and draw you closer to him, make you fervent in him.